So I think the title of the book is fantastic. I think it completely captures the reality. The United States is a completely ruthless empire. So maybe we should start with the term empire, just so that maybe if I explain how I'm defining empire, it'll make the definition make sense. So at its core, an empire is a state that rules over multiple countries, and then, of course, in the process, probably rules over multiple nations. The United States is imperial, therefore, at every level. So at its core, it conquered North America from the Native Americans, and in the process conquered multiple Native American nations and conquered multiple Native American countries. In fact, almost, I don't know if it's because we felt guilty about it or what, but frequently we use Native American country names for the state names. So, for example, Ohio used to refer to the country to the north of the Ohio River. So the state of Ohio is named after a Native American country. Kentucky was the country south of the Ohio River. So we sort of we almost acknowledge what we've done. In addition to that, the United States was created by conquering European-created or European countries. So, for example, New England, the North, the South. We also conquered half of Mexico. The United States owns the northern half of Mexico. And that's just dealing with the 48 states. So even if you dumped Alaska and Hawaii and all the territories, the United States is imperial internally. But then you get Alaska and Hawaii and Puerto Rico and Guam, American Samoa, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and that makes us even externally imperial. But to make things more complicated or worse, the United States has a permanent military presence in about 25 or so states around the world. That includes, of course, Germany and Japan, Egypt, the United Kingdom, Canada. In some of those cases, it's voluntary. So, for example, Canada and the United Kingdom have signed on. This is voluntary. But I'm hesitating because I can't imagine what it would look like if Canada or the United Kingdom were to ask us to leave. Right? Iraq asked us to leave last year. Sorry, it was this year? I don't remember now. Iraq asked us to leave in the last 6 months or so, and we said no, and we're still there. In the case of Japan, Cuba, or Germany, where we have permanent military bases, it's not voluntary. In fact, in Okinawa, the Japanese, the Okinawans, protest our presence at least once a year, and we ignore them. And there's really, literally nothing anybody can do about us. On top of that, we have a temporary military presence, and I'm hesitating there with temporary because temporary could last decades, in probably somewhere between 60 to 90 other states around the world. So that includes the Philippines, although we're leaving. That includes Afghanistan, although we're leaving. That includes Mali, Niger. Like, we're all over the planet, in places you would never expect us to be. The reason I can't give you a firm number is because the United States actually keeps that number secret. I can't tell you all the countries we're in. The way we find out we're in a country militarily is a body comes home. And then we're like, oh, we were in Niger? I didn't know. So we're extremely secretive. We have an extremely secretive foreign policy. And that's really, of course, a product of the last 19 or so years. So one of the things that I've tried to keep track of is all our military adventures, and I just can't do it anymore. I don't actually know what we're doing anymore, which makes it complicated for me because that's one of the things that I study. So, for example, I could give you kind of a number. I can give you a basic number. So from 1890, which is probably the moment when we stopped being internally imperial and became externally imperial. From 1890 until somewhere around 2010. So a 120-year span of time, the United States participated in approximately 130 military adventures. And I'm coding World War I and World War II as one each, just so we're clear. So in other words, we sent our military, just to give you an example, we invaded Honduras 8 times in that time period. We invaded Nicaragua 7 times. We use the 1890 date as sort of an arbitrary date. You could easily pull this back all the way to when we fought the Barbary pirates in the Mediterranean under Thomas Jefferson. But the 1890 point marks the point when the United States became extremely aggressive. We invaded Buenos Aires in Argentina, and then from there we began successive invasions of especially Latin American states, but also East Asia. We invaded China, we invaded Korea, and all of this before World War I. In other words, we were well on the path towards becoming a major imperial power even before World War I.